I was standing in the corridor of the third floor, clipboard in one hand, checking off the day's final inspection, when my phone buzzed in the front pocket of my apron. It was 6:12 p.m., the time of day when the hallway lights cast long shadows and the murmur of guest conversations drifted behind closed doors. I didn't rush to check it. I finished noting that room 311 needed a towel restock, and that the shower curtain in 3113 had a wrinkle at the hem. Only when I'd completed the checklist and was about to take the stairs down did I slip the phone out and glance at the screen. Mrs. Krause, thank you for your service, but as of Monday, your position will no longer be required. The hotel is undergoing restructuring. Please return your uniform to HR, LH. That was it. No call, no conversation, just a text message. Emotionless, final, and signed with 2 letters. LH. I stood frozen in the middle of the corridor, surrounded by the quiet hum of a hotel I had poured my life into. I could still hear the soft ding of the elevator down the hall, the muffled clatter of silverware being cleared from room 305's dinner tray. Life, it seemed, was going on, indifferent to the message that had just detonated inside my chest. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. My body didn't move for a full minute. Instead, I felt a strange stillness, the kind that comes after something you always knew might happen, but had convinced yourself it never would. Outside the window at the end of the hallway, a soft drizzle had started. Rain fell in delicate lines across the glass. I turned slightly and looked down to the street below, the entrance of the hotel, where guests were stepping out under the awning, waiting for taxis. No one looked up. Room 307 was the last room I'd checked that day. I remember it vividly now, more than any other. A towel had been folded, with the edge facing the wrong direction. The vase on the writing desk was too close to the edge. I had fixed both before leaving, out of habit, out of pride, out of love perhaps. That's the thing about people like me. We don't speak much, but we remember everything. Every small corner that needs to shine. Every name and preference of returning guests. Every shift covered when someone else called in sick. My name is Eva Krause, and I am 58 years old. I had worked at Hotel Sonnenblick since I was 31. 25 years of loyalty, of discipline, of quiet service, and that evening I received my dismissal not in a meeting, not face to face, not even via a letter, but through a text message from a boy I once helped button his winter coat before the company Christmas dinner. Leon Hoffman. He was 5 years old when he first ran through these corridors, barefoot and laughing. I had given him extra marshmallows with his cocoa. He had once proudly announced to guests that I made the best pancakes in the whole hotel, even though I didn't work in the kitchen. And now, 20 years later, Leon had returned from studying hospitality management abroad to modernize the operation. And, apparently, removing me was part of that vision. I folded the checklist in half, unclipped the metal name tag from my uniform, and slipped it into my apron pocket. Then, slowly, I began walking down the stairs. I've always preferred stairs over elevators. The feel of each step beneath my feet was grounding, predictable. The rain had picked up outside. It made a gentle drumming sound against the rooftop tiles. A sound I had come to love over the years. Something about it always reminded me of early mornings, before the guests woke, when I'd sip my coffee alone in the housekeeping office, listening to the rain and checking the linen inventory. Leon thought he was doing what every young manager does, wiping away the old to make room for the new. He saw me as outdated, replaceable, a relic in beige and flat shoes. He had no idea. He didn't know what his father, Mr. Dieter Hoffman, had told me in his final years. He didn't know what I'd been entrusted with, what I had locked away in my safe at home, wrapped in plastic, yellowing slightly at the edges. He didn't know that I had never stopped preparing, not for revenge, not for a return, but simply for the day when someone like him would forget what this place was built on. And so I walked out of the hallway I had once memorized like the back of my hand, into the dim lobby, and out into the rain. My shoes tapped gently against the cobblestones as I passed through the hotel's archway. I didn't look back. Not yet. I came to Hotel Sonnenblick in the spring of 1998 with 2 suitcases and a 4-year-old daughter named Mia. We arrived on the late train from Stuttgart, just after the cherry trees along the promenade had begun to bloom. I remember the smell of the lake air that evening, fresh, with a faint trace of linen and lemons. We had nowhere else to go. My marriage had ended the winter before, leaving me with debts, uncertainty, and the kind of silence that follows arguments that go on too long. A friend had mentioned that a family-run hotel in Meersburg was hiring. I hadn't worked in hospitality before, but I had raised a child, kept a home, and knew how to make a bed so crisp you could bounce a coin on it. When I walked into the lobby for the interview, I didn't know I was entering the building that would become my second home for the next quarter century. Back then, the hotel only had 12 rooms. The walls were pale yellow, decorated with framed sketches of the Bodensee and handwritten welcome notes from the owners, Dieter and Marianne Hoffman. They were an older couple, kind-eyed, and sharp in the way people are when they've built something with their bare hands. They did everything themselves, brewed the coffee, greeted guests at the door, folded the linens, and lit candles in the windows each evening to make the place feel warm. When I asked for a position, Dieter looked at me, tired, worn from travel, holding a little girl in a pink coat, and simply said, "Let's start with the rooms. Everything else will follow." He didn't ask for references. He didn't question the lines under my eyes or the way I hesitated before saying, "divorced." He just showed me the laundry room and handed me a spare apron. That's how it began. At first, I was just grateful for the work, but slowly, something changed. I started to care about the placement of every pillow, the angle of every towel, the scent of the hand soap. I noticed that guests lingered longer in rooms that had fresh flowers, not artificial ones. I started writing their preferences down in a notebook. By my 3rd year, I could tell from the sound of a guest's footsteps in the hallway whether they needed extra towels or preferred feather pillows. I learned how to fold towels in the Swiss hospital method, symmetrical, firm, with no creases showing. I polished bathroom mirrors until they looked like still water. I left chocolate mints with tiny handwritten notes for guests who stayed for more than 5 nights. Mr. Dieter once told me, during a quiet Monday afternoon, a good housekeeper changes sheets. A great one changes how a guest feels when they walk in the room. That stayed with me, and over time, so did I. When the hotel expanded to 30 rooms, then 50, I was still there. New staff came and went. Young women with fancy diplomas and confident voices. Some stayed for months, some for weeks. I stayed. I was promoted unofficially to head of housekeeping. Though we didn't have titles in those days. We just worked. And when people had questions, they came to me. The delivery men knew me by name. The suppliers trusted my inventory logs. Returning guests asked for the rooms Mrs. Eva oversees. I never asked for more. Not a raise, not recognition. I just showed up. 5 days a week, sometimes 6, sometimes 7 during holiday season. I took pride in the quiet details. The way a properly ironed bedsheet could signal care. The way a softly scented room could tell someone, "You're welcome here." My daughter grew up in those hallways. She helped me fold napkins in the staff room during summer breaks. The hotel became more than my job. It became my rhythm, my language. And then came Leon. He returned after university with sharp suits, foreign degrees, and PowerPoint slides titled Brand Identity Revamp and Millennial Market Trends. I remember watching him set up for a staff presentation, laser pointer in hand, as if the walls around him hadn't been scrubbed down for years by people who never needed charts to understand hospitality. I said nothing. That was my way. But I noticed how quickly he replaced linen suppliers, how he added mood playlists in the lobby, how he dismissed longtime vendors for cheaper apps and flashy consultants. He greeted guests with perfect diction, but never with memory. He didn't know Mrs. Vogler preferred room 212 because it overlooked the garden, or that the Zimmerman twins only slept with firm pillows and chamomile tea. He never asked. He assumed knowledge came from dashboards and market analysis. And so I continued, with my clipboard, my keys, my quiet. Until one winter morning, 3 years before he fired me by text, Mr. Dieter called me into his office. He looked older, slower. The hotel had grown, but he still wore the same navy cardigan he had since my first day. He handed me an envelope. Inside was a notarized certificate. Ownership, 8%. Small enough to go unnoticed. Big enough to matter. "This is not a gift," he told me. "This is recognition. One day, someone will forget what this place was built on. When they do, this is how you'll remind them." I kept it in my safe at home. I never told a soul, not even Mia, because I didn't want power. I just wanted no one to erase the years I had folded into those sheets, those rooms, that legacy. 2 days after the message, I returned to the hotel. Not in my uniform, not with a checklist, but as someone tying up loose ends. I arrived before the morning rush, before the smell of fresh rolls filled the lobby and before guests came down in slippers, rubbing sleep from their eyes. The hotel was always most honest in the early hours, stripped of pretenses, still shaking off the night. I walked in through the staff entrance, as I had done thousands of times, and made my way to the employee locker room. The air inside still smelled faintly of starch, coffee, and floor polish. Familiar. Too familiar. My locker, third from the end, opened with the same creak it always had. Inside, my neatly pressed uniform, folded the way I'd always taught the new girls. Sleeves tucked in, collar folded once, not twice. My shoes, polished. A spare hairnet. A handwritten schedule I had taped to the inside of the door for the seasonal room rotation, annotated with blue ink and tiny stars marking special guest requests, and the notebook, a thick, battered, navy blue notebook, dog-eared, filled with details only someone who'd spent 25 years in the same corridors could have written. I took the notebook, folded the uniform, and placed it gently into a tote bag. I stood there for a long moment before closing the locker. There was something ceremonial in that pause, as if I were folding away a chapter, not fabric. As I turned to leave, I heard voices from the front desk, light footsteps, confident laughter. I recognized one of them, Leon. He was standing at the counter, mid-conversation with the hotel's HR manager. Tall, polished, fitted in a navy blue suit that probably cost more than I made in a month. His hair was styled back, no longer the unruly mop he had as a child, and his face wore the carefully neutral expression of a man who had learned to hide his impatience behind business speak. We're rebranding, simplifying processes. Our guest experience needs to reflect efficiency and freshness, I heard him say. We're moving away from manual documentation. Everything will be digital by Q2. I stepped into the lobby just as he noticed me. His face didn't register surprise, just mild discomfort. "Ah, Frau Krause," he said, shifting his weight. "Thanks again for everything. Your final paperwork should be ready this week. We'll transfer your remaining days as vacation. We wish you all the best, of course." He smiled as if he'd done something generous, as if wishing you all the best could undo a message sent without eye contact. "We've hired someone new to lead housekeeping. She has experience with boutique hotels in Berlin," he added, as if it were a favor. "You'll see. She brings a fresh perspective." I nodded, not because I agreed, but because I had nothing to say to someone who believed experience could be replaced by trend reports. I turned to go, and almost bumped into a young woman stepping out of the elevator. She was probably 30. Blonde curls fell in neat waves over her shoulder. She wore a crisp white blazer, beige trousers, and carried a tablet instead of a clipboard. "I'm Alina," she said brightly. "I've heard wonderful things about you. I'm really excited to build on the foundation you've set." Her voice was cheerful. Her posture was open. Her handshake was firm. Her smile was just a little too wide. "Let me know if there's anything you think I should know. I want to do things right." I looked at her for a moment. She reminded me of myself at 31, eager to prove she belonged, full of ideas, full of hopes, but she hadn't scrubbed toilets at 5 a.m. for a VIP arrival. She hadn't had to re-iron linens because the guest recognized creases. She hadn't stayed up late on Christmas Eve when the night shift didn't show, or stood between a guest's tantrum and a junior staff member's tears. She hadn't earned the soul of the building, only the title. "Just one thing," I said quietly. "If a guest ever asks you why the pillow smells like lavender, say it's intentional. And then remember to put that note into your system. They'll come back for that cent, not the minibar upgrade. She blinked, unsure whether I was joking. I wasn't. Then I left, not because I was finished, but because I knew that Leon had made a mistake, not just in how he dismissed me, but in assuming I wouldn't have a voice that mattered. He hadn't been there when his father handed me that envelope. He hadn't seen the look in Mr. Dieter's eyes when he told me, "They may forget your name someday, Eva," but not the feeling they had walking into the rooms you prepared. That matters more than metrics. I never wanted revenge, but I wouldn't allow myself to be erased either. And for the first time in 25 years, I didn't return home exhausted. I returned ready. It was a Monday morning, gray, cold, and oddly still. I arrived at Hotel Sonnenblick shortly before 8:30 a.m., this time not through the staff entrance, but through the front door. The lobby looked just as I remembered, though the playlist had changed. A modern instrumental version of something upbeat, too clean, too fast. I approached the reception desk. The new girl, I didn't know her name, greeted me with polite confusion. She had likely started after I left. "Good morning. May I help you?" "Yes," I said simply. "I'm here for the shareholder meeting." She blinked. "Oh, I'm not sure there's anything scheduled for guests today." "I'm not a guest." I didn't explain. I didn't have to. I handed her my name and identification. She nodded awkwardly and directed me to the basement conference room. It was the same room where we'd once held holiday lunches, staff training, and once, years ago, a baby shower for the sous chef. Today it had been rearranged for a presentation, chairs aligned in a grid, a projection screen glowing with a blue background, and several people setting up laptops and water pitchers. Leon stood near the front, pacing as he reviewed notes, with a younger man in an ill-fitting blazer. There was a subtle tension in his gestures, the kind that doesn't appear unless someone is worried about being questioned. He didn't see me enter. I took a seat in the back row, quiet, as ever. At 9:02, Leon stepped forward. The projector lit up with a title slide, Strategic Restructuring and Brand Renewal, Q2 Vision. He spoke confidently, hands moving like he'd practiced this in front of a mirror. "Our hotel has an incredible legacy, but with that comes outdated practices. This proposal outlines a vision to align with market expectations, increase cost efficiency, and introduce new leadership to departments that require modernization." The room was mostly quiet, a few polite nods, a couple of half-interested scrolls on phones. I recognized two of the shareholders, silent investors who had never spent a night in the hotel they partially owned. Leon clicked to a slide titled Leadership Refresh. He began listing positions to be replaced, including housekeeping, where we believe younger leadership can better connect with evolving guest expectations. It was then I stood, not abruptly, just firmly. The chair made a soft sound against the carpet, enough for heads to turn. Leon looked up. His mouth paused mid-sentence. He hadn't expected me. "Mrs. Krause?" I walked to the end of the table and placed a cream-colored envelope on the polished oak. "This is a shareholder meeting, I said. And I am, in fact, a shareholder. Leon looked at the envelope and then at me, as if seeing me for the first time. I opened it, removed a document, and placed it flat for all to see. A certificate of ownership. 8% of Hotel Sonnenblick, signed by Dieter Hoffmann, and notarized on November 12, 2013. The room shifted. Some leaned forward, some whispered. One man, older, balding, cleared his throat with a hint of surprise. Leon blinked twice, then swallowed. I didn't know. My father never. He did, I interrupted. You just never asked. I reached into the envelope again and pulled out a second document. The Internal Governance Charter, updated in 2015, which stated that any major personnel change in upper management must not proceed if opposed by any shareholder with 5% stake or more. I slid the page across the table. I formally object to your proposal to replace the current housekeeping management. I request the board honor the charter and halt this action pending review. Silence. The kind that only comes when someone realizes they've lost control of the room. One of the silent investors, a woman with silver glasses and a scarf that matched the room's curtains, raised an eyebrow. Is this true? She asked Leon. He hesitated. A single beat too long. Yes, it's in the charter. Someone else coughed quietly. Another looked down, not wanting to be pulled into the middle. Leon shut his laptop slowly. We'll revisit the proposal, he said through tight lips. I said nothing more. I didn't need to. No raised voices, no power plays, only preparation and timing. I walked back to my seat at the rear of the room, sat down, crossed my legs. The same posture I'd used on every coffee break in every staff room for 25 years. Leon never looked at me again that day. But everyone else did. Not with pity, not with nostalgia, but with respect, the kind that doesn't come from loud speeches, but from being the one person in the room who knew the building better than the blueprints. I never returned to my position at the hotel, not because I couldn't, because I didn't need to. That chapter of my life had ended, but it ended on my terms, not as a silent dismissal, but as a quiet acknowledgement that my place in the hotel's story could never be erased. I let Alina take over the department. I even sent her my notebooks, the ones with all the details, the handwritten codes for recurring guests, the seasonal cleaning protocols I'd developed over 2 decades. Tucked into the package, I included a small note. Always greet the guests by name when you can. People forget what the pillows felt like, but they never forget how you made them feel. A few months later, I received a letter in the mail, not typed, but handwritten. It was from Alina. I used to think hotel management was about spreadsheets and strategy decks, she wrote. But then I started reading your notes. I realized I was managing a building, not a home. Thank you for not taking those with you. I smiled when I read it. Not because I wanted recognition, but because I saw that something of me still remained in those hallways. 1 year to the day after I was fired by text message, the hotel celebrated its 30th anniversary. I received an invitation, not via email, not from Leon, but a real envelope sealed with gold foil. Inside was a thick cream-colored card. Handwritten names, a program of events, and on the last page, a line that stopped me cold. With special thanks to Mrs. Eva Krause for being the quiet soul of the Sonnenblick for 25 years. It was signed by the new general manager, not Leon, interestingly, but someone else. I later learned Leon had transitioned into a regional role. Whether that was voluntary or not, I never asked. At the event, the hotel was dressed in fresh linens and soft lighting. Staff stood in new uniforms. Guests sipped wine under chandeliers, and a quartet played something soft in the background. I stood near the back, watching. Several former guests came over to greet me, not with small talk, but with memory. "You're the one who used to place fresh mint in the bathroom, right? My wife still talks about the time you found her favorite tea on short notice. Do you remember my dog Bruno? You gave him a towel after the storm." Yes, I remembered them all. Leon approached me at the end of the evening. His suit was perfect. His smile was quieter. "I owe you an apology," he said. I nodded. That was enough. He didn't owe me a career back. He owed me respect, and that was the first time I felt it in his voice. I didn't want revenge. I wanted to not be forgotten, to not be quietly discarded, like a uniform hung back into a locker. And I wasn't. These days, I live in a small house outside the town, the one I bought with savings and a modest inheritance. I tend a small garden. I volunteer once a week at the local library. I help my daughter, now a teacher, babysit her 2 little boys. Sometimes I pass by the hotel. I walk by the lake in the morning. I see new guests wheeling suitcases. I see old faces now behind the reception desk. And once, I saw Alina helping a trainee adjust the corner of a bedspread in room 307. She smiled, just slightly, when she noticed me in the hallway. Then she straightened the vase on the writing desk, just a few centimeters to the left. I didn't say a word, but I walked away knowing some things linger, not because we shout them, but because we did them well for long enough. People ask me if I miss it. Sometimes. I miss the rhythm, the quiet before dawn, the scent of polished wood, the silent satisfaction of looking at a room and knowing without a doubt it was ready. But mostly, I miss what it meant to be part of something that lasted. I didn't grow old working in that hotel. I grew deeper. Some people enter a job to climb, some stay to build, and some, like me, simply wanted to leave something better than they found it. So the next time you pass someone who's been doing the same quiet work for years, don't just walk past. They may not speak loudly, but they are watching, understanding, and simply waiting for the moment when it matters most.